I'm going to show you how you can automate your PowerPoint presentations via any list in SharePoint. So this feature here, I'll show you where it is. Once you click on the Engage tab, you click on Automate, and you'll see over here SharePoint SlideMerge. So this feature, think of SlideMerge as mail merge, but for slides. So every row of data represents a different slide. So this is very similar to the Excel slide merge, but instead of having the data in Excel, you have the data in lists that are in SharePoint. So let's close this here for now. And let's take a look at this slide. So this is the template slide. This is where you start. So I've already started building this template slide. I have a placeholder for the name of the project. I also have some text boxes here with the milestone and tasks. I've also got a placeholder here, which is just a square object here. And this is where I'll have an arrow, an image and an arrow either going up or down. And this will represent the change from the last period. So if it's positive, I'll show the arrow going up, and if it's negative, I'll show the arrow going down. I also have some donut charts here as well for some KPIs. The last thing I want to add here is a box here, a placeholder for some images. So this will be just a placeholder for an image to represent the project. In this case, each project is a city, so I'll have a picture of a city here. Okay, so with that being done, let's go ahead and take a look at SharePoint. So this is what my instance of SharePoint looks like. The list is called project list. And if we take a look at the columns here, the first column is, in this case, the name of the city, but this could be the name of the project. So to keep things simple, this would be the London project, this will be the Ottawa project, the New York project, the Paris project, and so on. And then every column represents a different dimension of data. So one dimension of data for the projects could be the milestones, the other one could be the tasks, another one would be that direction of the arrow either going up or down. And so what I have here is basically a text field, and it just points to a folder on my desktop called City Images. And I'll show you what those files look like, but you can see here some have up.png and some have down.png. A couple other dimensions of data, maybe my CPI index, my SPI index. And then I have another image, and this is the image of the city. So again, this is just a text field, and it just points to my desktop, same folder, city images, and then the name of the city.jpg. So that's really where those images are, and I'll make sure to show you that folder here. So the last field I'm just going to go over quickly now is the file name. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mention that now, and then I'll talk about it a bit some more later on where it'll make more sense. But you'll see that there's an option in Engage to create either one presentation with many slides in it or multiple presentations based on every row of data. So we'll talk about this a bit later on as well, and also mention this other column here a bit later. So this is what the data looks like in SharePoint. So then the objective is, how do we link each one of these columns to our template and then just auto-generate an entire presentation. So let's go ahead and go back to our presentation here. And before we do that, maybe let's go ahead and minimize this and take a look at my desktop here. So on my desktop, I have a folder here called City Images. So if we open that up, you'll see these are all the JPEG images of those cities. So each photo represents a different city or a different project. And as I scroll down, I'll just highlight Paris here. You'll see this is an image of Paris at night of the Eiffel Tower, but it's taken at night. And then if I keep scrolling down, you'll see that I have a down arrow, and then I have an up arrow. And instead of JPEGs, these are PNGs. Usually for arrows, I'll use PNGs only because I want a transparency around the arrow in case I use a different color background. But that's what this folder looks like. So let's go ahead and close this, and let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so this is the template that I like, and now let's sew it up using Engage. So let's click on the Engage tab, let's click on Automate, and let's click on SharePoint SlideMerge. Okay, perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a SlideMerge. So let's click on that button, and this is the additional step that you have to take because you have to connect to that SharePoint server. So let's go ahead and enter our credentials here. Let's see. That's RV1 /site/Markido. Okay, so let's add this server. All right, so you'll notice here that depending on whether or not you are logged into the domain, you might be given another window asking you for your username, your password, and your domain. But in this case, this is an instance of SharePoint hosted on the domain, so it already has that information, so it automatically passes that info, so it's not an issue. But if you don't have that, then you might be prompted to enter your username, your password, and to specify the domain if that's how your instance of SharePoint was set up. Okay, so once you get here, you'll see that the instance of SharePoint has a lot of lists. So if you select the drop down here, you can select the list that you want to link up. So in our case, we want to link up project list. So just click next. Okay, perfect. So what Engage does is then it takes all that information and it goes into that instance of SharePoint and it looks at that list and it brings all these different columns here that you can link up to this slide. So you'll notice there's CPI, SPI, city image, file name. So these are all the fields that we created. And in addition to that, it pulls up all these other fields as well that SharePoint automatically puts in. So content type, an ID, modified, created by, modified by. So you can link up all these other things as well. But if we go back here to city, let's grab this one here. So this will be the name of the city. So you have a couple different options. One is you can link up the value. You can link it up if it's an image or a value URL, something if you were to maybe say, for example, link up an API. But in this case, it's just a value. So let's go ahead and click map shape. So what this lets you do is it lets you select any shape. So in this case, it's a text box. And let's go ahead and link that selected shape. Okay, the next milestones, let's go ahead and click on map shape. So milestones, we're gonna go right in that text box. And tasks, same idea. This will show the percentage of tasks that have been complete. So there we go. Change from last period. Okay, so instead of a value, what this will be an image. So let's go ahead and you can select either top left, top right, but in this case, let's make this the same size. So if my arrows are a bit bigger or if it's a bit smaller, it'll just match the size to this placeholder that I've created here on my slide. Okay, so now let's link up the cost performance index, the CPI, so map shape. This time we're going to link it up to a donut chart. So let's link that up. And SPI, same idea. We're just going to link it up to this donut chart. And finally, the city image. Again, this is an image. So let's go ahead and click image. Again, we'll make it the same size. And we'll click on map shape. So we'll select this object over here. Okay, great. So everything is now linked up the way we want it linked up. If you need to modify something or if you're not sure what linked up to what, there's this little drop down next to the map shape button, which lets you either disconnect that shape or highlight that shape. So if I click on highlight shape, you'll see that it highlights the shape that's been linked up to this field. Okay, so let's click OK. Now this has been saved. And what we can do is we can run the slide merge. So let's add slides in the same presentation, and let's just click on Run Slide Merge. So this will be the name of the presentation, and let's go ahead and put that on my desktop. So we're going to run that. And I'll just let it run in real time so you get a sense of how long it takes. Okay, so now it's done. So it takes about half a second per slide, but this is what it looks like. So this is the SharePoint project results. And this is the results for the London project, the Ottawa project, New York project, Paris project, Toronto project, and so on. So again, I mentioned the Paris project, and you see here, this is an image of Paris at night. What I'm going to do now is let's update this, but instead of pulling an image from a folder on your computer, you can also pull images from the internet or the intranet, wherever you have those photos, wherever you have access to those folders or photos rather. So let's go ahead and close this. And this time, let's go back here to our instance of SharePoint. Okay, so I've got this over here. So what I'm going to do is here where I have Paris, this image over here, let's go ahead and delete this because I don't want it to pull this image anymore. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, I went to Wikipedia and I found a picture of Paris during the day. So this is the picture I want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste the address here via the browser. And let's go ahead and go back here to SharePoint. And I'm going to paste that HTTPS address from Wikipedia, or in this case, Wikimedia. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And now what we're going to do here is you'll notice that the milestones here, they're like 0.87 and the tasks are 0.12. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to show you what it looks like in the presentation. So the way I wanted it to look like was as a percentage value. But in SharePoint, when you enter this data, it goes in decimal places like this. So what I've done here is I've created another column here called milestones as a percentage. So the way I did that is I added another column. So I clicked on this plus button. So let's go ahead and click more column types. Okay, so we're going to call this task as percentage. And we're going to do calculated based on other columns. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple extra minutes just to show you a trick here. So this really falls more into SharePoint. The idea is like once you have the data that you want and you've set it up the way you want it and you've created that custom list, it's just to show you that you can create your own custom list in SharePoint based on other existing lists or other columns in SharePoint to do it to do what you want it to do. So what I'm going to do is this will be based on the task column. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to add a formula. Now, I don't know these formulas by heart, so I'll show you how I do this. I basically go into Excel. So let's go ahead and open up Excel. So let's put in a percentage value. And right now, this is what's showing up in SharePoint. I've got 0.92, but I want it to show as 92%. So what you can do is you can right click, go to Format Cells, and then click on Custom. And you see here, this is the actual formatting that I want. Sometimes the formatting is more complex. In this case, it's simple, but let's go ahead and Control C to copy that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do equals text. I'm going to open up that parentheses, and I'm just going to reference that cell D4, comma, and then in quotation marks, I'm going to put that formatting that I just copied. Okay, so now I've tested it out and I see that the formula works, and that's what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this formula, and I'm going to just go back here and I'm going to paste that formula. But instead of linking to D4, because that doesn't make much sense, I'm going to add to formula this task column. So let's go ahead and add that. Now it adds it at the end. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight it, and I'm going to move that over. I move it over just before the comma, but after the parentheses. Okay, perfect. So this is exactly what I want. And now I'm going to click OK. I'm going to let SharePoint do its thing. Okay, perfect. So now what you'll see is I have this other column here called task as percentage. So this is what I'm going to link up. So let's go ahead and let's go back to our presentation. This is our template. And so let's make a couple corrections here. So let's go ahead to automate, and we're going to go SharePoint. Now I'm going to select this here. This is what we did in the past. So let's go ahead and click on map columns. Okay, so it's opened this up. Now what I want to do is I want to disconnect this milestone and this task. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that shape. I'm also going to disconnect this one because you can only map one column to one shape. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have to duplicate the columns, you can do that. And so let's go ahead and do this. And now I find, okay, I'm going to click on reload columns. So what that's going to do is it's going to go back and look at all the new columns that we've added. So in this case, we've added a new task one. So let's go ahead, milestones, we're going to disconnect that shape again. Okay, great. So here we go. So now it's picked up this new column that we just added, which was the task as percentage. So what we're going to do is we're going to map this shape here over here. And then we're going to do the same with task as percentage. So we're going to link it over here. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So we're done there. Now let's run this SlideMerge. And instead of overwriting the one we just did, let's put the letter B here at the end, and I'll show you the differences. So it's just going to run this SlideMerge. Okay, so we're done here. Okay, fantastic. So now you can see that I have this as percentages. So this is what I wanted. And as I move forward, Ottawa, New York, Paris, now you can see that Paris is a photo of Paris during the day. So let's go ahead and take a look at our desktop here. And I'll close this Excel file. I don't need this anymore. But let's take a look at the original file here. So you can see, and I'll maybe just open both of them up so you can see side by side. But this was the original here. And so you can see that these were 2 decimal places for the milestones and the tasks. And I really wanted percentages. So if I keep moving forward, and you see Paris here, this here is an image of Paris at night. Based on that photo I showed you on my folder, and this is an image of Paris during the day based on a photo that I found on the internet on Wikipedia. So it just to show you that there's a lot of powerful features built in that you can really make the presentations that you want to make based on the data that you currently have in SharePoint. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you now is I'm going to close these presentations, and the last thing I'm going to show you is what happens when you don't want the London project manager to see the results for Ottawa and New York and vice versa. What you want to do is you want to create a unique presentation for each row of data. So only the London project manager sees London, only the Ottawa project manager sees Ottawa, and so on. So let's go ahead and close this, and that's what we're going to do right now. So let's go back to our template. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to click on Automate, SharePoint SlideMerge. And over here, you can see here, create a new presentation for each row of data. This is what we're going to select. And so before I run that SlideMerge, I'm just going to go back to this data over here. And you remember I told you about this file name column. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and created this. On my desktop, there's going to be a folder called project. So it doesn't exist right now, but it's Engage is going to create it on the fly for me if it doesn't already exist. And it's going to make the name of this presentation London. This one will be called Ottawa, and this one will be called New York, and so on. But in this case, I'm also going to create maybe another folder called Project Ottawa. And in that folder, I'm going to actually have the presentation called Ottawa. So you can do all this stuff in SharePoint, and you can use the same formulas that you've used in the past to create another column. And so you can automate this as well in SharePoint. So let's go back to the presentation because it'll make more sense once we run this. But let's go ahead and run the SlideMerge. Okay, so you have two options. The first option is you can just set the file location manually. So you could just, if you already have a folder, you can click on Browse, aim it towards that folder, and then it'll just automatically give it a name like Presentation 1, Presentation 2, Presentation 3, and so on. Then you have to click on each one and then manually give them a name. And move them around each folder manually after the fact. This is why there's option 2, which is so much more interesting. So what you can do is you can set the location of the file and the name via column in the data source, which is what we just did. So let's go ahead and click on that file name, column name right here. So it was called file name. So let's click on that and we'll click on select. And so you'll see it go ahead and create all of those 10 different presentations based on the information in that file name column that we put into SharePoint. Okay, so it's gone ahead and created those 10 presentations. And this is what it looks like. So just so you get a sense of what it looks like, this is my desktop now. So now there's a folder called Project, and there's also a folder called Project Ottawa. So these folders didn't exist before. So now if I click on Project, now I have all these different presentations. So if I click on the Beijing presentation, this is the Beijing presentation. If I go back here and I click on the Charleston presentation, this is the Charleston presentation. So the other thing that we did here is if we go back to desktop, you'll see in this folder, there should only be one presentation, and it should be the Ottawa presentation. So there it is. There's the Ottawa presentation, and there it is. So this gives you the ability to create different presentations and put them in different locations automatically by adding that one column in your SharePoint list. And so that's SharePoint SlideMerge.